Welcome back to another episode of Life After Corporate, my friend. And if you're new to our show, welcome home. This is where we have real conversations about the things that matter as you transition from being a corporate leader to an entrepreneur. And today, we're going to talk about visual branding and in the age of AI and how you continue to stand out, build your authority through authenticity and true originality. My guest today is Jordan Duvall. She's an award-winning creative director who has worked for top LA entertainment advertising agencies, the Ant Farm, BLT Associates, NBC, Universal, you name it. She has consulted for celebrities, networks, and some of the most recognized brands. Her work has been used to market blockbuster hits such as Lord of the Rings, Spider-Man, and The Voice. I'm a voice fanatic. She's the founder of Ignite Your Soul brand, a brand and website design studio specializing in high converting brands and Show It websites for coaches, creatives, and wellness brands using a unique blend of strategy, color psychology, and visual storytelling. The template shop is the go-to place. So if you are a DIYer, she has a template shop where you can get some high converting Show It websites that grow with your business. Welcome to Life After Corporate, Jordan
Excellent.
Duvall.
Well, Deb, it's so great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and full disclosure, Jordan is the creative director I go to for my creative work and my photo shoots, and I'm excited to host you here today because it was only a couple years ago that I believed my website didn't matter. My website was like 8 years old. It no longer reflected what I did, my brand, or even who I was as a person because I had grown and matured. So Jordan, before we dive into why websites are important and why your visual brand is important in this age of AI, tell us your life after corporate story. Sounds like you had an amazing job in LA as a creative director for some top brands. Why would you ever leave?
Good question. Sometimes I'm like, um, I was like, those cushy benefits were pretty amazing. Yeah, great question. I mean, I think, a lot of people diss corporate, but I think there's a time and a place for corporate. And I think that it's a wonderful place to learn and to grow and expand your career and understand like how big businesses work and systems and structures. And, I just got to the point kind of twofold. One, I became a mom and, I grew up in Los Angeles and I love LA. It will always be home to me, but it's not really where I wanted to raise my child. It's very, keeping up with the Joneses, very, like how you look centric. And I just didn't want to have that influence on my son. And so, you know, we were looking for places to move so that, we could have something like a place that valued family more and just have a slower pace of life. And, the tricky part is when you design movie posters, that's not really a transferable skill anywhere else in the world, maybe New York, maybe London. So, I knew that I needed to step up and launch my own business if I wanted to have that flexibility to be able to live wherever I wanted to have the kind of life that I desired.
Yeah, but it sounds like too that corporate gave you the skills that you now use in your own practice. And I think that's common for many entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs today, is that they're leveraging the skills and they're adding on to them. So what were those early days like for you when you first started launching your business? Was it, fish, water, swim? I've got these skills. I'm just going to transfer what I did for the studios to entrepreneurs.
I mean, there was definitely a learning curve, you know? I think part of me was like, oh, I come from the background of an employee mindset, right? So I really had to teach myself how to become a leader, how to become a CEO, how to think differently, how to be differently. And so, I had to learn a lot of the fundamentals of business in general, and then a lot of the fundamentals of like, how does the online world work? And I needed to learn marketing in a different way. When I'm creating movie posters and we're working on a global scale, you're just thinking differently and it's a different way of communicating. But when you translate that over to social media, there's like a cadence shift. You're posting, you know, 3 times a week at minimum, sometimes, daily, sometimes multiple times a day. So you have to really, align your nervous system with that capacity of that frequency and also, not burning out from having to be interesting in so many different ways in such volume. So that was an interesting and also just realizing that, social media is an ever shifting landscape. What worked sometimes a month ago doesn't work anymore. And so that can be a little bit overwhelming and exhausting because it's like you feel like you're on this hamster wheel of how do I keep up with everything? And, I don't have the solution or an answer besides just navigating through. But that's just been my experience.
Yeah, it is overwhelming, especially if you have resistance to visibility like I do. It's just, like, not my favorite thing to be, in front of a camera. It just isn't. And, so we'll talk more about that later, but let's talk about what I hear frequently from women who are making this transition is, "Oh, I'm working on my website." It's one of the first things they do. And, the other side of the coin are those that have had websites like I did for 8 years or more that are no longer reflective of the brand and, uh don't even reflect who you are anymore, but because I didn't think it mattered, I let it go for a really long time. So, those are 2 sides of a spectrum. So, what is your recommendation on when is it important to build a website, and why is the website such a powerful selling tool, as you said when we were talking
Yeah, that's
before?
a great question, and I think there's kind of 2 different tracks, as you mentioned, to talk about. So, if you are newer in business, I think that people can kind of push aside a website, but I think that the reframe needs to be that a website is really a credibility tool, right? It's like it's your storefront. When you have an online business or even when you have an offline business, that's where people go to gather information. They wanna find out, they wanna see whether they're conscious of it or not. They want to see, well, how do you present yourself? Does this person make sense? Does it feel trustworthy? Do they have social proof? What like it gives, when you're a person out there as a personal brand, it gives it form. It gives your presence form to for somebody to interpret who you are and how you show up in the world and what is your mission. And so, if you are newer in business, I would just encourage you to not discount it. And also, I would say, maybe you just need a one-page website. If you're just starting out your business, a one-page website is I would never say easy because the website's always more work than you anticipate, but it's very manageable. And, you really need like a good hero line, which is really important because that's your first impression. You can have a smaller photo shoot because you need assets for one page as opposed to 5 to 20 pages, depending on the scope of your business. And, you can have an about me section. You can have like a little bit of a blurb about how, oftentimes when you're starting out, you're either doing beta, courses or things like that, or you're doing consulting or coaching and you're, doing a sales call for your selling modality. So you can easily have a book a call link on there. So I think that's probably the best way to go about it, and that's one of the reasons that I created one-page website templates inside of my template shop because, you want to still feel professional. You still want people to, look perceive you as someone who's legit and an expert, and you shouldn't be shortchanged that just because you're newer in your business. So that would be my recommendation for someone who's just starting out is to build a one-page template, and if you have no design background whatsoever, I recommend using a template because it's already done. Somebody's already thought about the format and the structure, and you just go in and you plug and play your information and put it in there. And it's, relatively easy to just set up your back end tech to make it live. And then you have somewhere to send people. So that's really helpful for people. So I'll pause there if you have questions or
Yeah.
comments before we talk about like more advanced.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think I've seen a lot of horrendous websites that were DIY. No, really, because you're not a graphic designer, full stop. Graphic design is a skill. Now, I was fortunate in corporate to do a few years where I was marketing communications. I managed the graphic design team. I learned so much about graphic design from them that I'm pretty good at laying type out on a little square for Instagram. But graphic design is an art and a science as well. So I love the fact that you have templates that people can use. But the bigger issue here is, we're in 2025, 2026. Things started to erode about a year and a half ago. And I started hearing from prospects like, oh, I went to your website and I'd have this like gut punch in my gut this automatic expression of, "Oh, no, you didn't." And, the website shame was real because it no longer reflected our business, our brand, or, me for that matter. And, so I went to you and we did the colors, we did my colors, we did the website colors, you did the typography, and then I didn't hire you
Mm, what
to do the photo
that's
shoot.
why.
Oh, you worked
I
during
was doing
websites?
a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I was more focusing on photo direction and actual, brand identity. And then when I saw that
Yeah.
hole in my business, I decided to start doing website design. And I think I started maybe 6 months after you did your website or something. I have to.
Oh, okay. So, good to know. But, the point is that, when you first start out, you need the one pager. Once you're more established and you have a defined niche, you have a defined and differentiated value proposition, and you really want to put some visual power behind your brand, then that's when you invest a little bit more time, definitely more money in building out your brand presence on the web, and I resisted a little bit at first. I didn't see the value of having you direct the entire photo shoot, and then I got my photos back and I was like, "Oh, these are not what I was really intending, not what I was looking for." And just this fall, you and I worked together, you created the shot list, and that's not the photo direction, the creative direction brief, really, for the photographer. So I'd love to talk about why that was so important because I loved my last photo shoot. So part of it was, trusting that I needed more. I knew I needed more, but also me showing up in the scene at that time. So tell me about why the creative brief is so important.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that makes me different is that I approach a brand from the inside out. And a lot of times when people approach a photo shoot, they're just thinking tactically and strategically, like, I need this photo, I need that photo, or maybe they're not even thinking that at all. And they just hand their power over to the photographer. And the way that I approach it is your a photo shoot is really a journey of becoming and embodying the next level version of you. And so to me, it's so much more than photos. It's not just a shot list. It's really an internal transformation of stepping into this next level version of you that you can feel, that you understand, that you sense, but you're a little scared honestly to embody that person for, all those subconscious block reasons, but you really want to step into that version and you need someone to guide you because you can't see it yourself, right? I can see it just, that's one of my skill sets. And also I have the tactical, strategic understanding of how to actually execute it in a professional manner. So that's really, I think the reframe is understanding that it's really about decoding your essence from the beginning, right? And especially when you get to that place where your brand starts to feel misaligned, right? And it's often a sign that you're presenting yourself in an identity that's actually dead. And so you don't feel aligned, you don't want to show up, you get cringy when people go to your website because the way you're like it's like almost like you're wearing pants that are too tight and you just feel constricted and it's uncomfortable and you like just don't feel, you don't feel like you're shining at your best. And so when you can accept that and say, okay, I need to really evolve into this person. And it's also not about like who am I today? It's about who am I becoming a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now? What is that big vision? And so that's really the angle that I take is that 30,000 foot view. And then that's what I see of who you're becoming and what are the stories that you want to tell about your brand. And I also come at it through a marketing lens of, how do you actually make these stories marketing and sales tools? And so that's what I'm thinking about when I'm creating the creative direction brief. And then from there, then the shot list is an extension of that high level, decoding your essence, the strategy work, the identity work, the becoming work, all of that. Then you get into the tactics of, okay, what are the actual shot list images that I need? And I think, I come from a photography background and like, I love photographers. They're amazing, but photographers are not art directors. Photographers are not creative directors. They're not brand strategists. They are masters of light. and they understand how to capture images that are beautiful, but they don't necessarily understand the greater ecosystem of how they fit into the marketing and sales and presentation and image and influence. And so oftentimes I come from the world of advertising where there's always an art director associated with photographer. The art director comes up with the direction and then they direct the photographer. And that's just the normal world that I come from, and that's, I think, the missing piece is, the client or, the listener, they're acting as the creative director, but they can't see outside of themselves, and they also don't understand what they really need, and then they're putting that power into the hands of a photographer that also doesn't understand how to do that, and so oftentimes they get images that look pretty, but they feel off and they don't really serve the purpose. And there's a lot of disappointment because they spent a lot of money on this photo shoot.
Yeah. So it's like stepping into an acting role, and you're stepping into the character of who you're becoming. And sometimes there's a lag, right? So we're not quite feeling inside the way we want to feel when we're truly embodying, and you use that word embodiment when we were chatting before we hit record. Um, and this last photo shoot, I had to psych myself up and, say and coach myself through showing up in full surrender to the creative direction and being fully present because I wanted the results. I wanted the images to reflect that character of the Deb who is running the business that I imagine in my dreams. And it was really beautiful to have this three-way collaboration between you, the photographer who's Carly Storm, and myself, and co-creating this brand experience where I really truly felt like I was embodying my brand. So let's talk about this brand embodiment, concept that you have. What does that mean to you?
So, brand embodiment is really when your voice, your visuals, and the way you're presenting yourself are all aligned to who you are and what you're here to do. Because I think a lot of times, we maybe hire someone to do, a visual design or brand or website, whatever for us, and they're missing that soul excavation work. And so it kind of gets into your head or it gets into strategy, but it's missing that essence and the feeling. So and it's, a lot of it is it's sort of esoteric to go through that process. Like you said, you really need to surrender to it. And there's also an element of, owning that next level version of yourself. Because, when you are out there in the world and you are on social media and you have, whether you have a corporate job or you have a business or whatever it is, like 100% of the people in the world have a personal brand because it's how you show up, right? And like a lot of times people associate that with LinkedIn. But sometimes a personal brand and a business brand are separate, and sometimes they're exactly the same thing. But no matter what, you always have a personal brand. It's how people perceive you if you're doing job interviews or you're doing speaking events or you're writing a book or whatever it is, whatever you're doing to establish yourself as an expert or a thought leader. And so it's really that process of removing any sort of friction of performing or, you know, pretending to be someone else or thinking that you need to be someone else or playing into trends, all of those things. It's really like true surrender of this is who I am. I accept myself. I love myself. I know, there's a chance of being visible. There could be judgment, whatever it is. But I know deep in my soul, this is who I am and this is what I'm here to do. And I'm going to step into that role and I'm going to like fully embody and express that version of myself.
Yeah, it's like stepping into your true character. Instead of stepping into character, it's stepping into your true
Well, it's your
character.
main character
And
energy, really, right? Like your main character energy.
yeah, yeah, I love that. And in this trust recession that we're in, where, trust is at an all-time low, skepticism is super high, a lot of people are making fake promises, AI is making dull people sound brilliant, that I believe true, radical transparency, being who you truly are, is true originality, and that's the source of thought leadership and standing out. So it's like the anti-AI brand. So let's talk about any comments on that first before we move.
No, I mean, I agree with it, and I think that, I think that there's AI is here to stay, and it's changing how we operate as people. It's the biggest disruptor I think we've ever had in human history. We've had a lot of different, and like I've been obsessively studying AI from, systems to avatars to visual. Like I want to understand what this is, because I don't want to be thrown off guard, and figuring out what's the most ethical way to integrate it into my business. Um, because if you run away from AI, you're going to get left behind. So you need to understand how it works and figure out the best way to integrate it into your business. But I think that there's so many different ways that we could integrate AI, right? AI can, take over repetitive tasks that, we don't necessarily need to be doing as humans. That is potentially a great use for it. It can help you with productivity. You know, there's the there's like the sparring partner, ideation partner, which I think can be really beneficial as long as you're in conversation, as opposed to like, "Oh, AI told me to do that." Like, it's a pushback and you're having a conversation about it, and I've just spent this week catching up on, Tony Robbins' AI Advantage, which was like 3 three-hour days of training around AI, and all of these AI thought leaders, they all had one thing in common. They had created an AI, thread or piece or whatever you call it, in whatever platform was their platform of choice, and they were having conversations with it, talking about strategy. So I do think that that's a very valuable way to use it. But then there's also the visual aspect, and it's funny because I'm not gonna lie, when it first came out, I was so, head in the sand, like I don't want to deal with this. I'm gonna like be made irrelevant and lose my job, and this is scary. But what's funny is I have a lot of people coming to me and they're like, "I had AI make XYZ for me and it was a disaster. Like, can you fix it?" And I'm just like, AI is not human. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't understand the nuances of art and simplicity and symbolism. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. And I don't I don't know if AI will ever be there to do, what there is for a human to do. And I also just think, like, ethically and spiritually, I don't think it's wise to use AI as your brand photos, as your photo shoot, you know? If you're using it as something kind of like, I have a friend who uses it to make sort of like campy, fun images that like are very clearly like, this is definitely AI, like this is a wild world.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, like you're kind of being honest about the fact that you're using AI without having to say like this is made with AI. Like it's very clear this is an AI image. That's one thing, but it's another thing when you're like, I used an AI headshot or I used AI images. Like I was working on a mock-up for a client's website and he didn't have photos. So I was creating images with AI as like mock-up placeholders for his photo shoot. And I was just like, these just look so funky. I was like, it just looks so weird. And I was like, it was like, yeah, it's fine. It's a placeholder, but it doesn't take the place of you needing to do this work to step into this next level of who you are.
Yeah, and I truly believe, if people lack trust, then, what they want is authenticity and truth. And if you're using AI, like I've started distrusting most of the photographs that I see on my social media feed and like literally zooming into the eyes to see, is this really a human or is this really AI? Because there is energy transference. So I was a photographer way back when. I studied photography in New York City and art photo history. And photos elicit emotion and they tap into your heart. And I just don't think the algorithm has the same power to do that. And so I would recommend that people stay away from that as well, especially for brand photos. You don't wanna you wanna bring yourself forward in true authenticity to connect directly to your audience, both in your words. I don't think you should use AI for your website either. I think, it's important to be able to be original in this time frame, and so I think there'll be this big backlash with AI versus true original content, and original content is gonna rise to the top, whether it's visual or written or auditory for that matter, audio. Um, the last thing, and we didn't talk about it, and I wanna go back a little bit because obviously when you're doing a brand initiatives and a website, color is involved, right? So talk about the importance of color because I know your brand colors are radically different than mine. The clothes we wear, the colors we wear are so different. Why is color important when you're considering your brand, your website,
Yeah, absolutely.
all the
So I
elements?
think, again, a reframe is, yeah, it's color, but ultimately it's a frequency. And you as a human are a frequency, right? I'm guessing that probably the majority of your audience understands the concept of energy and frequency and alignment. And so when, you know, s- uh, your innate energy as a person aligns with a specific set of colors that enhance your natural energy, right? So for example, like I really work well with like bold, bright colors and it suits my personality, right? I'm a Scorpio, like I'm deep, I'm an intense person, very passionate. And so for me, bright, saturated colors, and it's not like global colors, it's like a specific set of colors match my energy and match the brand that I am conveying to people, that presence, that identity. And, someone who's maybe calmer or, maybe they're in more of the healing modalities, they're going to need color that's more soothing, right? That it's in alignment with their message. And I think that's the thing that people often miss is I just was talking about this yesterday in a training is, people sometimes will pick colors that they like and that's great, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're the right colors to express your brand. And when you're thinking about colors, you need to make sure that individually, the colors enhance who you are and align with your frequency, but also you have to make sure that the colors as a grouping are cohesive because you can have colors that are maybe two, like one color. Like I was doing this with a client, was helping her with her website customization, and she came to me. I was like, I really like these colors, and there was one color, and I was like, this color does not belong here. And she's like, I love that color. I was like, I love that you love that color. But I was like, it does not work with the grouping. I was like, if you really like something in this world, we can tone it down and calibrate it so that it works with the other colors. But I do think just generally it does not work with the grouping. And so, I sometimes get pushback from people. I'm like, ultimately I'm the messenger. You can choose to take the information however you want. And after playing with the colors, she's like, you were right, it doesn't belong. And I was like, you know, that yeah, I saw that outcome coming. So, um,
Yeah.
so I think that's something really important is to understand that they need to work as a unit. But ultimately, it really comes down to aligning with your frequency.
Right, and how do you do that? Like, I know you've got this secret sauce. It's like your witchy skill, behind the scenes, and I was so when we did the color analysis, like, it feels like 2
Yeah,
years ago now,
around that.
maybe it was just a little over a year ago, but, I was so happy to see, a couple of my favorite colors in there, but the crusher was that black was not my color, and coming from New York City and having a closet half full of black clothes, was very interesting, but I was really happy to see teal in there because I really do love that teal blue-green color. So, how do you go about determining, like, black's not for you or white's not for you or, teal is in your palette and periwinkle and all that? How do you do that color analysis?
Yeah, well, I think, there's a lot of formulaic processes out there that, have a decent foundation, but they're not bespoke to each person. Like every single color palette I create for a client is unique to them and not any single one is the same. So, there is a baseline of seasonal color analysis. But beyond that, there's a much deeper aspect to it because within the seasons, there's an aesthetic personality for each season that goes into textures, colors, line shape, uh, you know, everything you could possibly imagine. And when you keep that consistency with how you express someone's brand in line with every single aesthetic decision that supports the overall creative direction, it creates this feeling of harmony and beauty and just like peace that people feel when they go to something. I mean, you've gone to websites, you've gone to probably restaurants, you've probably gone into clothing shops, and you go in and you're like, "Eh, something just feels off." But when it's like that chef's kiss, that magical moment, like you walk in and you're just like, oh, like this feels so amazing. And it's because all of these visual aesthetic choices are all aligned to integrate and work together. And I think that's the piece that's, really important. And so that's really what I'm taking into consideration. And, once I understand what someone's general colors are, then it's dependent on what is their personality, what is their eye color, what is their hair color, what what are the uses of the colors, because within the work that I do, it's very clear to me, like, these are your power colors, and I tell that to my clients. I'm like, when you do sales calls and you do guest speaking, you want to wear these colors. When you want to sit on the couch on a Sunday and just lay around and read a book and watch TV, you get a cozy sweatsuit in this color. So, color can have specific uses, and when you use it to your benefit, like this color, whenever I wear this royal blue, I get compliments every time I wear it. People like, it's sort of become my brand color. It's like, this and kind of a raspberry, sort of my recognizable brand color. So you can use color to create that level of recognition when people interact with you or see you and your brand online.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a good friend that does that really well. Everything in her I'm not sure, she ever got color analyzed, but, everything in her purview is purple, everything in her brand is a shade of purple or pink. And then you've also seen those horrible websites, and I hate it when a client shows me a website and it's like a black background with neon colors up, and they're I know, right? Yeah, Jordan's cringing here. Yeah, it's just really and how do you just delicately say and they're so proud of it that, like, "Oh my god, that's, like, bashing me over the head." It's almost like going to a heavy metal concert. It doesn't do anything to, like, invite me in.
Well, and I think
Um,
one thing to keep in
oops.
mind is I have a trained eye, so I can look at someone's online presence and I can tell what's going on with them personally. Like, not like in their marriage or like that. Wow. But like, I can tell by the way that they're presenting themselves where their friction is. Like, if they have like too many fonts and it's like really crowded, then they're overwhelmed, right? That they don't have that sense of clarity, they don't have that peace. So I can read between the lines as to what's really going on from a subconscious perspective based on how someone's presenting themselves.
Yeah. And, now more than ever, I think that paying attention to your personal brand is, it's not a throwaway phrase, but you said brand embodiment, which I really like a lot, because it really is about your uniqueness, your unique ability, the unique way that you think and you operate and you speak and you bring your gifts to the world. Um, no one has your DNA. No one should have your color palette. No one should have your visual identity either. It belongs to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What are some of the what final thought do you have for our listeners, Jordan, that you want to be sure that they walk away with and don't overlook as they look to refine? I think this is a period of refinement of it's a good time to refine your brand presence online.
Yeah, well, I think it depends on somebody's personality, but it's always helpful to have these check-ins, right? Because, like you said, you went 8 years with your website and just kind of let it go. So, depending on your personality and, how you run your business, maybe you set an annual review on your calendar, whether it's like October, November, December, and you sit down and you review your brand. Like, does your messaging feel aligned? Does your color palette feel aligned? Like, does your logo feel aligned? All of that you're really like doing this own internal audit, or potentially you hire someone to do an audit for you. So you have that, and then you have that like, check in to say, okay, so maybe next year I need to invest in this piece or whatever it may be. Or maybe it's something where you're checking in quarterly. If you're newer in your business, maybe you want to do it more often. Maybe it's quarterly or biannually. Because the thing is, people will do their brand and kind of set it and forget it. And it's easy to get busy with other things and then you kind of push it aside. And then, like you, Deb, 8 years down the road, you're like, like super cringy. I don't look at this website. Like, please don't go to my website. So, you're constantly evolving as a person. And so you're going to be stepping into a different version of yourself. You're going to become, a more savvy business person. You're going to become more of a CEO. You're going to have more leadership, all of these things. You're going to be growing and healing as a person. And so the way that you are presenting yourself or did present yourself in the past, there is going to come a moment where you're like, this, like, I can't even like look at my photos anymore. Like, I can't even do it anymore. So, if you are doing these check ins, you're going to start to feel that friction before you get to that wall. And so if you start to sense that friction, you could say, all right, I'm starting to feel like kind of out of alignment. I'm not ready this second, but maybe I'm putting into my budget and my planning like 6 months from now, I'm going to do a photo shoot. So then you can really stay ahead of it. So you're staying relevant and aligned versus like waiting to the point where it's like now it's really does not feel aligned with you anymore. And now you're kind of like playing catch up. And you're also going to have to clean up the damage of being out of alignment and what that does to your desire to be visible.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, Jordan, this has been a great conversation. I'm sure you and I could talk all day about visual branding and all these things, but how do people get in touch with you? Where can they grab those templates? Where should
Yeah,
they
well,
go?
my website is igniteyoursoulbrand.com. So I have, you can book a call if you want to chat more with me. I have the list of different offers I have. I'm going to be releasing all new offers in 2026, which I'm working on behind the scenes. I have the template shop. So if you feel called to have a one-page website or, a website that's really built around identity of you as a CEO and an embodied leader, that's really the unique selling proposition of the templates that I offer. So you can go there and check that out. And then I also have Instagram, which is at igniteyoursoulbrand.com. So, you can always come and slide into my DMs if you want to chat.
That is igniteyoursoulbrand.com, and we will put that link in the show notes. Thank you very much, Jordan, for joining us
Excellent. Well,
today.
thank you so much. And then also I have a magnetic brand guide freebie. So that walks you through really like what is the core essence of your brand? How do you look at color? What are the different meanings of color? So, that might be helpful for people, wherever you are in business to kind of have that check.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Well, that's it for now, my friends. Your brand matters and you need to embody it. And while you need a website when you first get started, it's probably not the website that you'll be happy with a year from now. So know that you're evolving and changing in your website too, and use AI carefully, both in how you describe your value as well as how you show up visually online. It can give the wrong impression because it's not your energy. It's not you. It's not your original self. So that's it for now, my friends. We will see you next time on Life After Corporate. Thank you for joining us today. And if you love this show, please leave us a rating and review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you are listening to this show. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.